What up, everyone, and welcome to The Social Room, where strategic networking meets insightful business conversations. I'm your host, Aiden Snell, and this show is designed to connect you with business leaders, visionaries, and entrepreneurs who are not only crushing it and making waves within their industries, but who might also just share the game that can take you to the next level. In each episode, we'll explore the stories of these business owners and how they're impacting lives. Who knows? You might just find your next big opportunity right here on this episode. So sit back, tune in, and let's get social. All right, guys, today we are joined by the one and only Richard Parker, founder of Diomo Corporation. Richard, how are you today, man?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing good. I can't complain. Richard, tell us a little bit about yourself real quick. Where are you from? What are you passionate about?
I'm originally from Canada. I live in South Florida. I've been living here for 29 years. And besides passion for my family and friends, and the Montreal Canadiens and the Buffalo Bills, my work passion is related to buying and selling businesses.
Let's go. That's awesome. Well, listen, Richard, I'm glad you could join us here on the show. To start it off, we're going to get right into what I call the Power 5. I'm going to ask you 5 power questions, and you're going to give me your best answers. No pressure. You ready?
No pressure. Go.
Question number 1, what's been the most valuable lesson you've learned from failure?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
No worries. What's the most valuable lesson that you've learned from failure?
Well, the most valuable lesson, that's an easy one. Failures are just part of success. So just dust yourself off and get going.
If you had to start over, what's the first thing you'd do differently?
Wow. The first thing I would do differently is I would shut my mouth a lot more and listen more than I talk.
What's the best investment you've made in your business?
I thought my best investment overall, my best investment has always been key employees.
Nice. If you could master one skill that you may not have right now, what would it be and why?
Oh, like a superpower so that I could hear people's thoughts. Well, one of those, or like fly through walls and concrete, and concrete, is that superpower or a business superpower?
I would say a business superpower, like a skill more specifically.
I would probably want to get better even on the financial side of things. A little more detail on the financial side.
Nice. And last question, what's the proudest moment you've had in business so far?
The proudest moment, well, there's certainly more than one. So it's any time we've been able to take a business and grow it exponentially. I mean, those are certainly, and sell. I mean, those are always proud moments when you take something, you see it early on, you think you could grow the business, and you build it out to something successful. So one of the early ones was a company that I had acquired for about $100,000. We built it up to over $4.5 million. That was in Canada, so that would be like the U.S. equivalent to a $45 million business, and then exited the company. That was pretty rewarding.
Nice. Let's go, Richard. Well, awesome, man. You crushed it, flew right through those questions, gave some really great answers. I want to talk a little bit more about Diomo Corporation, right?
Sure.
Tell me how you got involved in this industry, in this field, and how you came up with Diomo.
How I came up with the name with Diomo? The name, well, Diomo, it's D-I-O-M-O. It's the abbreviation for doing it on my own.
Nice.
I've owned that company for since 1990. And so, and despite all I've purchased 14 businesses, but I would never sell the name Diomo because that was my first business. I actually started that and then made an acquisition shortly thereafter. But that's when I was working for a company. I got myself into deep financial trouble through some just ridiculous mistakes I made in the stock market, and realized that I've got to get into my own business if I'm going to ever work my way out of that financial hole. I had to put myself in a position where there was no limit on my income, even though I was doing very well. So that's how I realized that I can go to Las Vegas, put it onto 17 black, but I don't gamble. I take risks, but I don't gamble, or buy lotto tickets, which that's not going to work. So I recognized pretty quick that the only way out of that mess that I put myself into was, again, put myself into a situation where I could be the driver of my income, and there would be no ceiling on my income. So getting into my own business was my decision at that point. I started a small company and then made an acquisition shortly thereafter, and here we are a bunch of years later, and have done 14 of them at this point.
Wow, let's go. So it's really Diomo founded as a result of you just being in a financial crisis, some mistakes that you made in the stock market, and you were like, hey, I gotta get myself out of this, and you knew right away, like, what made you specifically want to get into the business of buying and selling businesses?
Well, Diomo was started as a result of me being an idiot. So that's which in hindsight worked out okay. after I started my first business, after a few months, organic growth is very sexy and is very rewarding. But I recognized very quickly that if I want to grow this business at that point in time, it would be much easier to buy other businesses that I could bolt on to my then existing business, and increase the business substantially without going through all the heartburn of a startup. And so, I was in the consumer products business, and I had a stable of really good customers, retailers, large retailers, big box retailers, like the U.S. equivalent to the Walmarts and the Costco's of the world, and I was selling them a certain product line, and said, hey, it would be much, if I'm already visiting these customers, I've built up this great relationship with all these customers, why don't I just figure out how I get more product to sell to the same group of customers? In other words, I had this pipeline, how do I cram more stuff into this pipeline? And recognize that the easiest way to do that, instead of trying to develop products, was go out and buy companies that already had products that I could bring to the same group of customers. So it just became very obvious to me that growth through acquisition is a lot easier than growth through startups. And I got into a bunch of different ones that weren't necessarily related to my original business, but that was the genesis for acquisitions.
Nice. I love it. That's so interesting. So now, Richard, tell me about the people that you're helping. Are you helping anybody with a company, or what's the specific audience that Diomo is really tailored to?
Okay, great. So I appreciate that question. So going back a number of years, as a result of a failed acquisition, I realized that the average person who was trying to acquire a business really had no resources. Brokers weren't helpful, bankers weren't helpful, accountants and attorneys have their role, but there really wasn't a lot of good information available for individuals looking to buy a business. And here we are, even with the advent and the proliferation of the internet and AI and what have you, there's just a tremendous amount of disinformation and misinformation being really misleading. So we developed a course. I just wanted to help people. I wanted to be able to take all my years of experience and all the deals that I've looked at and memorialize them into a program that would walk people, take them by the hand and walk them through the whole process of how to think about buying a business, how to go through each of the various 23 steps in the process, and give them an education, but also here's what you need to know, here's what you need to do, and here's how to do it. So I ended up developing this program without any aspirations. I never thought this was going to turn into a business. I did this just to memorialize all the deals that I'd looked at, and my intention back then was always, if I could help one person buy the right business or avoid buying the wrong one, it would be well worth the exercise. And here we are a number of years later, and we've sold 100,000 of these. I'm always available to people. They email me, we get on phone calls, we do free webinars. I don't charge people for any of this, for the additional help. At the stage of my life, I've been very blessed and very lucky. I really achieved a measure of success that I would have never dreamed possible. And it's just nice to be at the stage where I could really get up and just help people every day.
I love that. Let's go, Richard. So more specifically, what are the pain points, the problems that you feel like your audience really is struggling with, that they're facing, that you really come in and help them out with?
So there's a number of key points. The first is, and by far, is people have no idea what type of business is right for them. They confuse experience of an industry, for example, where they may have worked, and thinking that's expertise, because experience does not equal expertise. So it's really honing in on what type of business is perfectly right for the individual. It could be a good business, but if it's not run by the right person, it's going to go out of business quickly. So really focusing on that, and most people are really unsure about that. The other pieces are overpaying, where people don't have any valuation skills whatsoever. They think that the asking price of a business is how they should be basing their valuation. They don't understand the fundamentals that you need to go through to come up with a defensible valuation. There's arranging financing for a transaction. Banks don't lend money to individuals to buy businesses. There are some programs, but by and large, you can't just walk into the Bank of America and they're going to lend you a loan to buy a business if you have no experience. I could get a loan because I've been doing this for 30 years, but the average person who's never done it, the banks are not, unless you collateralize it 100%. There's a terrible misconception by all these internet scammers that you could buy these magnificent businesses for no money down, and that doesn't exist. And then the last point would be people's concern about uncovering problems after the acquisition. In other words, not having a bulletproof checklist of due diligence items that they need to go through to make sure that, you know, the seller isn't hiding something, because people lie. You know, numbers don't lie, but people lie, and they're worried about finding out these problems when it's too late. I mean, you need to uncover the problems before you buy the business, not after you buy it. So the people run into trouble as a result. And really the hub to all of that is a lack of preparation and lack of knowledge. That's it.
Got you. What happens if they ignore the fact that they need to prepare, right? All these pain points, these problems that you brought up, like what happens then if you know your audience ignores these problems and pain points?
If they ignore all the pain points, then hopefully they'll be lucky enough to never buy a business. Because if they buy one, it's going to be a financial catastrophe. I could, you know, I mentioned earlier, I don't bet, I don't gamble, but I take risks, calculated risks. But I'm willing to bet. If you do not prepare properly, and for some of the pain points that we articulated, you're going to have a disaster on your hands, which is so easy to avoid, and which is pretty crazy, because if you acquire the knowledge and align yourself with people that can help you, who've been there, done that, you know, believable parties, and you have them help you along the way. Acquiring a business is doable by anybody, number one. Number two, your success is, you acquire a business on Monday, you take a paycheck on Friday when you buy a business, when you buy a good business. So by simple steps of just acquiring knowledge about how to do this, the success that you stand to achieve is so enormous relative to the failure that you could experience if you're not practical and prudent. It's sort of ridiculous that people don't take these logical steps to inform themselves. Like it's just pardon my French, just like a shitty, lazy way out of things. I mean, which, you know, it's like there's no quick path. There's no shortcut.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's awesome, Richard. Can you tell me about, like, I know you mentioned in the beginning of the call, kind of like one of your proudest moments was that always being able to just do your job on a really high level and get some success for your clients. Can you tell me more about some client success stories, and, you know, what kind of transformation did they experience as a result of working with Diomo?
So the wonderful thing is, when our clients, and we have a really high success rate, the success that they achieve is so phenomenal. It's actually so overwhelming, it's almost emotional, because you're able to change someone's life. You know, someone, and I'm not going to give you any delusional infomercial type pitches or what have you, you know, about people, things that have done. But the reality is, when people who are looking, that have hopes and dreams and aspirations to change their life, to go into their own business, they're tired of working for a boss. They really want to give themselves their own shot. And we have people who've invested, you know, taken $30,000. You know, we have actually a testimonial on our site. Don Wilson, who lives in the west coast of Florida, he started with $30,000, bought a small candy shop, then started learning about it, kept following our program. We spoke constantly. He bought other businesses. He then exited a number of businesses, sold out for $6 million and retired. We have another fellow, Iggy Domagalski, who's on our website. He and his partner, you know, used our program, started buying businesses, then bought more and more and started increasing their businesses. They grew them to about $200 million in revenue. They sold out for over $100 million. We have other people that are just on a much lower level. Bought a business, grew the business, sold out, and, you know, 3, 4, 5, 10 times their money. Don't get me wrong. It's not an easy path. You got to work. You got to learn how to buy a business. You got to know how to buy a business. You got to go through the process, and you also have to work the business. But the foundation that they were able to start from, in other words, buying a good, solid, existing business where you have revenues, you have profits, you have customers, you have employees, you have procedures. You can get in there immediately, learn the business, and then start growing it. So, you know, we've run out of space for our testimonials, which is a nice thing. I mean, it's really, but that happens when you do a lot of good things over many years. That's what happens.
Wow, incredible. And more specifically, when that success rate is so high and a client is able to come through your business and really get the desired outcome, what type of transformation do you feel that has on their lives? You mentioned that it does change their life. How do you think this changes their lives?
It changes their lives in a number of ways. Number one, and the obvious one, is financial, of course. That's binary. That's easy. And it's easy to measure. But you also get the point of it changes their lives from a standpoint they're able to help others. When I say help others, not just their family members, but employees who grow with their business. And there's a tremendous gratification that you are able to derive when you have employees and you're able to help them grow and empower them and improve their lives. You're able to, be more philanthropic. You're able to take more time off. You're able to spend more time with your family. You're able to plan more for your future. All these wonderful things that are beside the materialistic part of it. So the financial piece, that's defined and that's great and it's wonderful for a lot of people, and oftentimes it's the motivating factor for people. But the gratification that you get from buying, growing your own business goes far beyond the financials. You also feel a sense of independence, that you're not relying on some boss who's an asshole, that wakes up one morning and says, they're not doing their job even though you have been, or there's some favoritism. You're controlling your own destiny. Yeah, you're never really completely in charge. The man upstairs is, but you get away from this, you have a level of independence that you can't possibly achieve when you work for someone else. So besides the money, there's just these bullet points of gratification and joy that you get from owning a good business that you just can't replicate anywhere else.
I love it, Richard. Well, amazing. How can people work with you? Where can they find you, Richard?
Very easy, richardparker.com.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's go.
Any last words for the audience?
The only last words I say, first of all, I appreciate you having me. The only last words I'd say that if you have any inkling or any interest or even a trickle, like my late partner used to say, an entrepreneurial itch that you wanted to scratch, or a trickle of entrepreneurial blood that runs through your veins, don't wait till it's too late. Just take the time, learn about what's involved. Can you do this? Buying businesses is not just for rich people. It's not just for big companies. This is very doable if you do it in a practical way. And I think you owe it to yourself to really go through, to learn about it. You don't necessarily have to do it, but at least learn what's involved. And I think people will be stunned to find out that hey, this is very doable. And so I encourage people, we put up tons of free videos and education and articles and podcasts like this that we're on. I'm on them all the time. So people can go to richardparker.com, get a real good free education. If they want to take it to the next step and look at our course or whatever, that's great. But they could really learn about what's involved. And so I would urge people to do that. Don't sit on the sidelines.
Amazing, Richard. Well, hey, it's been an honor and a pleasure having you on the episode. I appreciate you for coming on.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me, and look forward to seeing you continue to do great things.
And that is a wrap on this episode of The Social Room. I hope you found some great insights and maybe even some potential opportunities and ideas. Remember, the connections you make today could be the game changers of tomorrow. If you're interested in continuing the conversation or exploring potential partnerships, don't hesitate to reach out. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with a friend who needs to hear it. Stay tuned until next time.